Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third edition of Set, the Scotch Wrestling World Show. I'm your host, Scott Hubert, and this is the first show of the year 2008. This is the first show of the year where I'm going to build up and talk about the past week of professional wrestling and whatever else there is, We're starting what I promised we would be doing in year 2008 is talking about the past week of professional wrestling. On today's show, I'd like to rumble on the road to the Royal Rumble. It sets the stage for WrestleMania, so to speak, as the challenges for the world titles for WrestleMania are most likely decided at the Royal Rumbles every single year. I'm going to give up my suggestion of who's going to win it. I have a book review and 2 DVD reviews. So it's a nice action-packed show, and I'm going to talk about a legend of professional wrestling during this show today. What I'd like to start off with are my reviews. I'm going to start off with my book review. Last book review I gave you was Batista Unleashed. I gave him 4 stars, I believe it was. This book, Chris Jericho, A Lion's Tale Around the World in Spandex. Tell you what, this is the kind of book I like to read, because Chris Jericho, he's still in the wrestling business. He just came back last November, or last December, whatever month it was. And it's the kind of book that I like to read where the guy, has it kind of like his books are parts, like this is his first book in a series that he's going to have for his entire wrestling career, because he leads up to the point where he's coming out of the dressing room for his debut in WWE television back in 1999, and it ends right there, And tell you what, this book leaves me wanting more from Chris Jericho. He's got some great comedy in this book. He talks about the travels. Literally, he has traveled around the world. He goes from Mexico to Japan, Germany. He started off in Canada. I'll give you the rundown of the countries that he's traveled through. I mean, it really is around the world in spandex. Like the part 1's Winnipeg, Calgary, Wichita, and elsewhere. He goes to Mexico. It's his first country. Then Germany. Goes back to the United States for Knoxville. Japan. Comes back for Philly. Talks about his time in WCW down in Atlanta. And then he talks about how he came up to New York, as they like to talk about, as they like to call it in the wrestling business, but we all wrestling fans know it better as the WWE. And he ends it where he comes in as Y2J in the WWE back in 1999, coming out during the Rock promo, and it leaves you wanting more from this book. And I tell you what, Chris Jericho, he's an excellent writer. I mean, he is better than Mick Foley. Mick Foley has done a tremendous job with his books, where he has continued writing about his wrestling career and so on, and I like that. Chris Jericho, I got a feeling he's going to do the exact same thing in this book. It's really good. And sometimes in wrestling books, usually about wrestlers, they talk about their childhood and their growing up and everything, and a lot of things that, you probably couldn't care less about, but if you want to know the guy more in depth about their personal life, you probably enjoy that. But for me, sometimes when a guy goes on, more than like 40, 50 pages about his childhood and growing up, or how getting in or whatever, it bugs me. It's a slow starting book, but right off the bat, Chris Jericho's talking about how he grew up watching wrestling, how he idolized guys in the Stampede promotion and in the AWA, how he went to the AWA, and then right from there he goes on and talks how he went and trained, and then what have you. He goes talking about his wrestling career. Foreword was by Jim Ross. Chris Jericho in this book, he has addressed the problem in his book too, is that he has pictures of the late Chris Benoit and his wife Nancy. In this book, at the end of the book, he talks about how how Chris Benoit was not the man that killed his wife and murdered his son and then, killed himself. So, right there's the picture with Nancy, Chris, and Stu Hart. And that was at Owen's funeral, I believe. And he didn't take it out of the book, even though he was working on it during the Benoit tragedy. He didn't take it out. And, you kind of almost, because everything now is having Chris Benoit taken out of it, Any DVDs that Chris Benoit included them on, they're taken out right away because, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want, they're trying to wash their hands clean of it. But Chris Jericho here, being a true friend to Benoit, even though it's kind of hard to be after all the things he did do, and still having him in this book and thanking him and everything is kind of good. And he goes on and he lists the wrestlers that have passed in his requiem at the end of the book of guys that he liked to thank that have helped him along his career, and that he mentions in this book, and that they're never going to know because they have sadly passed on. And he mentions Benoit and his wife Nancy and Benoit's son Daniel in the requiem in the end. Out of 5 stars, I give it a 4.5. Yeah, it's an excellent book. It's not the perfect book, but it's up there. It's up there. It is for sure. I mean, Chris Jericho, you really don't know a lot of what this guy has done. I mean, really, the guy has not had it easy in the professional wrestling business. He really hasn't. You know, working for a podunk promotion in Germany, working in Mexico, being jerked around, Winnipeg, all those places, and being jerked around in Atlanta. I mean, really, Chris Jericho has had it hard in professional wrestling in the way and how he's the first undisputed champion and how he's in WWE today and one of the top stars in the business of all time, or not of all time, but of right now. You have to say it's a lot. That tells a lot about Chris Jericho's character. He has to put up with all that much garbage and junk throughout his wrestling career, and he still comes on top. It's an amazing thing. DVD review. I love reviews about promotions and like the Monday Night War. I love that DVD. The AWA DVD, I loved it. You know why I love those kind of things? Because I like learning behind the scenes and what certain things have happened, over time, like in the AWA, of how they contributed so much to the wrestling business and, all this and that. And Vern Gagne being the promoter. I love reading about promoters and everything else. I love Vince McMahon's DVD and I love Eric Bischoff's book because they're promoters. I love that kind of stuff. And they come up with a World Class Championship Wrestling DVD. And I knew I had to have it because I love these kind of things. So here it is. The Triumph and Tragedy of World Class Championship Wrestling, run by the Von Erichs, and tell you what, it really was a tragedy, the Von Erich story. Well, I mean, after you read, you watch this DVD, I mean, and you see everything that this family has gone through. Kevin Von Erich, the only remaining Von Erich left. I mean, how can you not sympathize with the Von Erichs? I mean, all these guys have gone through, it's just amazing. But World Class, it was innovative in its time. It had hot feuds. Guys such as Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels grew up watching this. Stone Cold Steve Austin actually went through World Class Championship Wrestling. That was his first gig, was WCCW. And you know what? This is a lot of, for Stone Cold, who went on and enjoyed a lot of success that we all know about, and I will not get into because it's a kind of a rehash story that everybody always hears whenever his name's mentioned, If you're a wrestling fan, you know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is. But, Von Erichs, they talk about, the death of David Von Erich, I think, was really the first thing that did the tumble. It was like the slide down for World Class. Because David Von Erich, I mean, I heard a lot about David Von Erich, and everything, and they always talk about how this guy could have been a world champion, and I thought, oh, you're just saying that because the guy, passed away. And, you hear a lot about that. You could hear somebody say, oh, he was such a good man, or he could have been world champion someday, and you watch the guy, and the guy sucked. You're only saying that because the guy died. But you watch David Von Erich's matches. David Von Erich, he could have been NWA heavyweight champion. He could have had a memorable feud with Ric Flair back in the 80s if he wanted to, for the NWA World Heavyweight title. But you know what? World of wrestling in the 80s. What can you say? Drugs, alcohol, women. You get into